The producer Brendan Martin is working with us right now. So we got a lot to talk about today. Great lineup. Chris Lee starts off in the first segment, the Southeastern 14 up in Nashville. Segment number 2, Tony Barnhart, Mr. College Football, is on with us. He'll also talk about his new book, The 19 of Green. Get a copy of it. You can order it on Amazon. Hour number 2, Yancy Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline. You'll definitely want to hear what he's got to say. Jackson Dart and the Ole Miss Rebels are building probably more momentum than any team in the SEC besides Georgia in the hunt for the national championship next year. And in the fourth segment, we'll hear from our good friend Rodney Orr-Tider, insider in Tuscaloosa. He'll also talk about his new book, Bigger Than Bama. You will definitely want to hear the story. It is a true story. And Tony Barnhart and Rodney Orr, just two of the best guests we have, but also two of the best writers. All right, we'll be right back.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne here with you on this beautiful Tuesday morning. Kiddingly, it is in Memphis here. It is raining hard. Last week we got 6 inches of snow. This week we're getting 6 inches of rain. I don't know,
it's
Chris.
It's sunny in Florida, just so you know. It's sunny here. It's going to be like 80 today, dude.
Yeah. Well, see, Chris, this is our new executive producer, Brendan Martin, down in Ocala, Florida, GatorbaitMedia.com and the Buddy Martin Show. So it is, 80 degrees down there. And here we are up here. It was supposed to warm up yesterday. I think it got to 35. We went out yesterday afternoon, ice 6 inches thick. An impact drill will only go so far. So we got going on that. But, it's going to be fun. And Brendan and I were talking before the show, Chris. I told him, Southeastern 14, you have a great show. You also are Vandy rivals. And what are we going to talk about today? One of the things I want to get into with you is the portal, those commercials that Dr. Pepper's got going. It's insane. And in the real business world, there's no way you can operate like this. And you talk to a lot of coaches. You've got a lot of great relationships. What's on the record and what's off the record. We respect that 110%. We also ardently and fervently revere and promote the First Amendment. We don't tell people what to say or how to think or anything like that. I'm pretty basic, man. But I want your thoughts from your angle on the portal. We don't need the government involved, that's for sure.
Yeah. Your point about the Dr. Pepper commercial was a good one. That cracks me up every time I see it. It's so, I don't know if accurate's the word, but it's funny. There's certainly an element of truth in there enough to where it makes it funny. I was talking to someone yesterday who's pretty well connected in SEC circles about this whole thing and the mess that it is. And again, I feel like at times I talk out of both sides of my mouth. I don't mean for it to come across that way. It's just life is complicated, and this is really complicated because on one hand, it has created the situation where it has allowed for more parity at the top than I think we've ever seen in our lifetime. And I think that's a good thing for the state of the game, that when you get to, middle of October, the question is which one of these 6 or 7 teams can win it rather than can anybody beat Alabama or Georgia or Ohio State in some miracle world. So I say all that to say, at the same time, you look at how it's made.
Yeah.
And I don't know anybody that's in love with this. The coaches aren't in love with it.
Yeah.
And you just saw Nick Saban step aside. I don't pretend that was everything to do with it, but it certainly had something to do with it. Mm-hmm. You even hear Lane Kiffin speak out and say, He doesn't like it, but everybody's in the same place together where they've got to make the best of it. And that's how it goes. You might end up having to do things you don't really like to do in order to make your football program win and keep your job. All that said, I was talking to my contact yesterday, and I said, look, this is chaos. Everybody knows it. Nobody likes it. At some point, this has got to hit a breaking point. And on one hand, there does seem to be a little bit of underground current, and I haven't unpacked this much at all, so I don't know where this is. But I think we all know life and business happens on contracts, right? You didn't buy your house with the handshake and oh yeah, we'll pay for it. It's nothing in life that is built on order works that way. And so you have boosters paying for kids that they don't know how long they're going to have. They don't know what level they're going to perform. And as somebody told me, you got programs out there buying teams, and you've got programs out there like Alabama and a few others that try to, all right, you come here, you're going to get NIL opportunities. That's going to be based on everybody's going to get this based on your situation. And then if you make some more of it, you're going to get some more. And I'm rambling here, but there's a point. You have other teams that are just going and buying players and saying you're going to get all your money up front. And sometimes they get it and sometimes they don't. And it's chaos. And it's just not a good way for anybody to operate. But at the same time, look at TV ratings.
Yeah.
Look at ticket sales. The money is there. And I said, okay, this doesn't make any sense. Everybody knows this needs order. Everybody knows it needs guardrails. Usually when you get a situation like that, the market takes care of itself.
Yeah.
The market might be the problem, Rob. The problem seems to be, and this is just one man's opinion, but this is also the way it's gone, is it continues to get more off the rails. As long as everybody's buying tickets, as long as the TV contracts are good, as long as everybody's making money, I don't know that the NCAA, which has hardly been the most visionary institution to begin with, and certainly not one that's enterprising or out there looking to improve the product in innovative and forward-thinking ways, they're the ones driving this. As long as the checks continue to cash and as long as they continue to be high numbers, I think that's the issue.
I think you're right. And the free market, which I'm a right-wing capitalist and a patriot, and participate in the free market every day in my other job, I will say this right now. The fans, look at Alabama as an example. As of a couple of days ago, more than 30 players in the portal. And I'm sure there were people that put a lot of money, collectively it's probably in the millions, to pay for this recruiting class. And these kids are walking. Again, we're supposed to be teaching these kids the lessons of life, hard work. You know, when things don't go your way, you can't just lay down and quit, because one day you're going to have a wife and children, a mortgage to pay, bills to pay. You're going to have to fight and find excuses to win. We're not preparing them for anything but for a life of disappointment. Because you're right. You buy a house, it's not a handshake. You know, we'll pay for it. There's about that thick of paperwork. Everything in the real world is contracts. What's happened is there's this false narrative by a group of attorneys in Sacramento, California, that push this crap, that these athletes are all victims. And nothing could be more further from the truth than that. And the free market will fix it in that you watch, and Franz Beard said this yesterday, and Brendan, you're listening, you know, our executive producer with the Buddy Martin Show and GatorbaitMedia.com, you're going to have some crash and burns in NIL to slow it down, stop it, fix it, whatever. But even in professional sports, if we didn't do this, we just have the Yankees and the Dodgers every year competing for the World Series.
I would push back on one thing, that the kid victimhood, and because I don't agree with that in general. These guys are getting scholarships. At the same time, there's a market value for players that was being hedged off. And again, I don't know if I've mentioned this on the show. If you want to read a really good book, that I think has parallels to this time. One of the best sports books, one of the best books I've ever read, period. And it's not widely circulated. You might have to go on eBay and find a used copy. But Marvin Miller, who used to be the head of the Players Association for baseball, talks about the stuff that baseball went through in getting free agency. And the owners circulated a narrative that the players bought and even peddled back against Marvin Miller, that you're going to ruin the game. I think you had a very small handful of players making six-figure salaries in the mid-'70s. You're going to ruin franchise values are off the charts. If you could get a share in an MLB team or an NFL team, you're going to be making way more money than you are in the market. Somehow this thing has continued to grow and grow and grow. And it's almost like if you own a pro sports franchise, you're printing money. Now, the parallel to where we are is that players have a market value. It was being warded off to some degree, but you had the black market that would pay it. And it was done through uncles and handlers and funneling money through churches and all the things. And so, and the NCAA managed to convince all of us that it was wrong for players to get paid. And what would happen, and I think the Nike thing sort of exposed this back 5 or 6 years ago when Will Wade and Bill Self, all that stuff came out. There were people making money off it. Those people weren't the kids. And I think if there's a market for something, as capitalists, I fundamentally have a problem with people not getting paid what they're worth. At the same time, you've got to have law and order and a fair field and things to ensure kids get what they're promised. I mean, you saw the tweet from Walter Nolan about, hey, not always what they say it is, or whatever it was he said in that. I just think the whole thing, I'm for guys getting what they're worth. No, the issue you have too, and I'm going in a lot of directions, is how you tie this into the schools, given the income, because you got Title IX to work around. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what you do with that, but I think we've moved in some good direction where kids are allowed to get paid, where clearly they have a market value. But what we're looking at is not the answer either.
Yeah. Look, absolutely. A lot of wealthy people, if they inherited the money and have never worked, don't understand how to pay people. They struggle with that. But typically, the first generation employs, the second enjoys, and the third destroys, unless you make your kids go to work. And the people that I have the most respect for make their kids drive the delivery trucks, clean the bathrooms, scrub the floors. That's what you've got to do to earn the respect of the people that work for you. And I'm going to tell you, we are really blessed. I love this guy, Chad House, ECS House Industries. You see their sponsorship on the show. They make the better roller, the pulverizer, the better chopper. They make the aerators for catfish farms that are sold in America and all over the world. I mean, a couple of days before Christmas, Audrey always sees this. He goes, "This is my favorite time of year." He goes, "I get to write bonus checks to my employees." He goes, "They are what this company is. And, we have the best people in the world." That's the kind of people that you want to see versus some person that's got a lot of money and doesn't want to pay anybody anything. They know the cost of everything and the value of nothing. So real quick, before we move on to the next topic, you're right. People need to be paid, but there's got to be some structure, because you can't just charge 20% on a real estate commission, or a bond trade or a stock trade. There are limits on all that stuff. And when you see a player like that kid for Ole Miss showing up in a Lamborghini and all, you got people that are here's the question. Are you giving more money to your colleges or universities collective, NIL collective, than you are to your own kids or to your own church? That's what you better be thinking about, because at the end of the day, if I'm giving to St. Louis Catholic Church or the Catholic Diocese or any organization, I want to know what that money's being used for. So you got to have responsibility that defines the mission, authority that gives you the ability to make decisions, to get rid of people, to keep them, whatever. The third one is accountability. But, at the end of the day, that what's driving people crazy is like Alabama. Okay, I'm an Auburn grad, but I mean, I'm on this show, and I'm object. I am. That's disgusting. Nick Saban, and that's 17 years of his, and these kids are just going to walk like. Look, well, he walked, but he did not start out making $9 or $10 million a year. Coach John Brady was on the show yesterday. I love it, John Brady. What was your first salary as a coach? He goes, I'm kind of embarrassed to say this, but $15,000 a year. I mean, golly, man, that's reality. You have to work. Anything worth having is worth fighting for. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
All right, Chris. Another one, and I hope you'll stay on with us. Tony Barnhart, Mr. College Football, comes on in about 15 minutes. If you can stay on, we'd love to have you do it. But let's talk some basketball in the SEC. I mentioned it to you last week. Auburn goes up to Vanderbilt. This is ridiculous. Vanderbilt basketball, they've got to get a coach in there.
Yeah.
This guy's combat ineffective. He's coaching ineffective. They deserve better. I mean, why won't they ought to hire you to be their sports information director? Because media relations directors, pretty much all they do is tell you no, no, no.
Yeah. First of all, I'd love to stay on longer. I can't today. Okay. I've got about 10 more minutes. It's a snow day here, and I'm the only adult in the house getting the kids. Gotcha. I say it's a snow day. We've got a late start.
Yeah.
Look, that situation's a mess. The warning signs that this would never work were here from the week he started.
Yeah.
And I always say, I mean, sometimes you fool people. Sometimes it works for a while. I think what Jerry Stackhouse has done, it's like if you're taking a Major League Baseball player and he strikes out 40% of the time. So sometimes it can work for spells because he can hit a ball 120 miles an hour and he can pound a fastball and they go out. But generally, if you're striking out 40% of the time, you might hit in bits and pieces, but most of all, it's not going to work. Jerry got lucky last year that it hit in a small piece. It hit for about, a 6-week stretch where they won every single close game they were involved in for the most part. The odds of them going back and threading the needle the way they did again are slim. But I think that propped up a lot of optimism. And look, you take what's in front of you and you process it accordingly. You got to give the guy credit, whether you think it's a fluke or not. It happened, and I do think he did some good things. But all the reasons this was never going to work, from not taking instruction from assistants, to ego in recruiting, to not getting after in recruiting, are all coming crashing down on them. Jerry Stackhouse has got plenty of blame in this. He also raised a good point. He has sort of started to point the finger and say, we can't get transfers in. Well, that's not entirely true. They can get transfers in. The problem at Vanderbilt, and he's not wrong about this, is that there's a 60-hour rule. You can only transfer 60 hours into Vanderbilt. I don't think that's the case at any other SEC school. So, Rob, if you come to Vanderbilt, you got 117 hours at Butler. You're going to lose 57 of them off the bat. So there's a hole in what they can get. They can maybe get a graduate transfer. Then you're talking about being able to get into a graduate program at Vanderbilt, which is not easy.
Yeah.
Or you can get a guy in those first 2 years where they're not losing much. Or you've got to find a guy who says, okay, I can live with losing 20, 30 hours, whatever, and make it work. He's not wrong about that. The problem is this was not news to him. And you can't present it as such when things start to go wrong, because there's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah. Well, something, you if a coach is going to win, he'll show it in the first year, the signs of that they're going in the right direction. This is year 5, so just blows my mind. All right, switching gears, looking in the SEC, give me your top 5 teams right now on what you've seen. And the league looks pretty strong, but you know basketball really well.
I'll go in order. I've got a top two, and I go Tennessee, Auburn. Statistically, Auburn is best team in the league. It's the only team, I think it and Houston are the only two teams in the country in Ken Pomeroy's top 10 adjusted defense and offense. Houston may have fallen out this weekend. I haven't looked it up lately. At the same time, Auburn hasn't played a lot of elite opponents, and I don't know what you can make of that. Tennessee's right there very close with Auburn in the computers. Tennessee has beaten some teams, won at Wisconsin, got 4 or 5 better wins probably than anything Auburn's got. So I would go Tennessee 1, Auburn 2 for that. Kentucky to me is 3. Kentucky is the most talented team in the league if it comes together. Kentucky is also lagging defensively behind those other two. I think Ken Palm, has Kentucky 99 on defense. The people that crunch the numbers say you don't win a national title that way. So I don't know if that improves. They added the third 7-footer. He lit the world on fire. Again, talent's there. It's young. We'll see how that goes. 4 to me is Alabama. Elite offensive team, although it is not – things have dropped off for them. You look at the conference-only stats. They're not the offensive juggernaut in conference that they were out of it. That could change. They're good enough. And I think my 5 is Mississippi State. You could argue Texas A&M. But since State got Tolu Smith back, it was a team – the core of the team was elite defensively last year. They've got a shooter in the freshman who suddenly escapes my name, Josh Hubbard. They didn't have him last year. You could argue A&M is 6, but that team is so much struggling to shoot the ball right now. I can't put A&M there yet.
Yeah, we talked yesterday about with Coach John Brady, who's the color analyst on the LSU Basketball Network, and he said A&M has 2 players that can shoot, and that's the problem. But Buzz Williams is going to get every ounce of whatever talent anybody on that roster has. They will fight you for the full 40, and they're a lot like a football team. But I look here, Auburn is going to be in their next 8 games playing 6 quadrant 1 opponents. That's what you got to wonder about. Jason Caldwell, Auburn Undercover, was on yesterday in our first segment, and he said, I'm not even sure there's an NBA player on the roster. Maybe Aiden Holloway, who came in as the 5-star, the number 2 player in California, is really good. But you've got 11 guys that are unselfish. You have guys like Chris Moore from West Memphis, Arkansas, who signed in the class of 20. This is like his 4th, 5th year. Just loves Auburn. And these guys, they will not go in because they'll say, oh, he's playing really well. Keep him in. That Dylan Cardwell. Just
Jalen Williams.
Just loves Auburn. And, they played their former teammate and coach, 2 Auburn grads, Alan Flanagan and his dad, Wes Flanagan. And, there was Chris Moore grew up, and there was Bruce Pearl was really adamant. Don't boo these guys. These are Auburn men. And, Alan Flanagan and Wes Flanagan, Wes is coaching with his friend Chris Beard from his days back in Little Rock. And, of course, they're both from Little Rock. But I look at Tennessee, look at Alabama. Tennessee beat Alabama by 20. What's the takeaway from that? Thompson Bowling Arena is a terrible place to have to play Tennessee right now. They're just lethal at home.
Yeah, I think that's one takeaway. They don't lose a lot in that building. Tennessee plays a physical style. This just in the home whistle and the benefit of the doubt is more geared towards the home teams, and you can probably do things at homes you don't do on the road. And here's the thing with Tennessee. I think you can make the case Dalton Connect is the most valuable player to his team in the league. Because what happens to Tennessee, they've had these great teams statistically. Hey, maybe this is the year that Rick Barnes makes the Final Four. Last year, Santiago Vescovi, I guess, was their go-to guy. Yep. This year, you don't even hear his name talked about because he's moved down to probably what's a better station for him if you're going to have an elite team. Dalton Connect is a guy that maybe is going to be a first-round NBA pick. He's an elite scorer. He can get shots. He's a big-bodied kid. Hit 39 against Florida last week. He can take over games and gives them the dimension they've never had. I think that is the separator between Tennessee and some of the other teams. The defense is there. They're number 2 in adjusted efficiency. That is always going to be a staple of Rick Barnes' teams. But now they got a dude who can go out and score in bunches. They really haven't had that since Grant Williams. And even then, Grant Williams was a different type of player. He was a forward who did a lot of it inside. Connect is a guy that can hit you with the 3, beat you with the drive. I think that's the dimension they have sorely lacked, and I think that's why Tennessee's ceiling is higher than it's been probably since Rick Barnes has been there.
Well, every year Tennessee has lots of talent. I mean, they're going to have a couple of 5-stars on that roster. And 17 years Rick Barnes was at Texas. He had success there. He had success at Clemson. He's had success everywhere he's been. Maybe the mystery team is Kentucky. Hadn't won a national championship since 2012. Last Final Four was maybe 7 years ago. Is it 7? Yeah. Maybe longer. But this Kentucky team, they just got John Calipari his 400th win last week. How good are they, in your opinion? Because you're up there in Nashville, and there are a lot of Kentucky fans, and you follow Kentucky basketball.
I think there's 2 different questions. How good are they, and how good could they be? How good are they? The computers have got them in the teens. Again, that the issue is on defense. I see mental lapses at times with them, which is not uncommon for young teams. You saw it in the Kansas game to start the season. I don't know if you watched it. Kentucky looked unbeatable, and then youth took over down the stretch. Happened in a different way Saturday. They're up, I don't know, almost 30 on Georgia. I didn't really watch it with detail at that point because I was on to other things, but I guess they took their foot off the gas a little bit. That got interesting late. Those are just 2 things that have been kind of characteristic with Kentucky. Now, look, you take the parts, disassemble it with any team, and put them back together, all things being equal, Kentucky's got the highest upside of anybody in the league, maybe anybody in the country. Purdue's kind of the wild card because nobody's got a Zach Edey. But, I mean, Rob Dillingham had a 41 offensive rating on Saturday against Georgia, which is a top 50 defensive team. Kentucky scored 105 points anyway. They had Big Z come in. Everybody's talked about that. That kid put on a show in 15 minutes. I don't know if that's what he is going forward. I don't know if that was just a nice little spell, and now that people have got film on and scout him, it was an outlier. We'll wait and see. But even without him, they got Reed Shepherd. They got Rob Dillingham, who's a takeover guy at times. DJ Wagner and the Edwards kid are almost afterthoughts. They got a go-to scorer in Antonio Reeves, who's one of the best in the league at that. They got Trey Mitchell, who's one of the best bigs in the league, just solid at every phase of the game. I just don't think – Auburn's got a lot of parts, and Auburn's got, 10 guys that have played 15 minutes or more on average and done well. I don't think anybody's got the combination of depth and top-end talent that Kentucky has. Whether it comes together or not, that's what makes March fun.
No, it is. I mean, I love it, the stuff that's happening right now. And it is. I know you've got to get going. A big day. It's a snow day, which means you start late. But let people know how they can follow you, and let's do this again next week. Always love having you on.
Yeah, you can follow us at Southeastern 14 on Twitter. Name change coming soon, but you can find us not on Twitter, YouTube, which is where most of our stuff is. We cover SEC football, baseball, and basketball wall to wall, even in the off season. We're usually pumping out 3 or 4 pieces of content every day. We'll be previewing all of Wednesday's games. I'm leaving shortly to record those. And then if you like the Vandy side of things, VandySports.com, it is the Vanderbilt home on the Rivals Network. We cover baseball, football, and basketball there in depth. So if you want your Vandy fix, your SEC fix, those are the 2 things that I'm involved with.
Well, you really know your stuff. And the main thing, I like what you said about the portal. You believe people need to be paid for what they're worth. There just needs to be some structure in there, but we don't need the federal government involved. Chris, we'll do it again next week. Take care.
Thank you.
All right. Hey, we'll be joined here in just a second by Tony Barnhart, Mr. College Football. And look, everybody is looking for solutions. At least they're looking for solutions, because if you're going to complain about something that you want something fixed, you better have a solution, okay? One of the best in the business, Mr. College Football, Tony Barnhart, is going to join us now from over in Dunwoody, Atlanta, home of the Mad Italian. the great Philly cheesesteak sandwich that Rich from Atlanta has got me hooked on. But he puts spaghetti on his, and he calls it a steak pizza, a pizza steak. That's what they call it in Philadelphia. But hey, Tony, I want to talk about Brendan Martin, our executive producer. We've got on our team now.
We've met before. How you doing, Tony?
I'm doing well, Brendan. Thank you.
Good to see you, sir.
You bet.
Yeah. And you know, Brendan, I don't know if you have read or seen or heard about Tony's book, The 19 of Green.
Oh, yeah.
It's a great story. And I love it when we have guests who are writers, because they are almost always your best, because they think about what they're saying because they've written it. But when they write books, and Tony, you've written books, this is a great story. I want to talk, you talk about this, let our viewers and listeners know about it. And then we're going to get some comments from Urban Meyer. Buddy Martin had him on the Buddy Martin show here in the last few days about what's going on in college and the portal. Then I want to get your reaction to that. But let's talk about the 19 of Green.
Well, sure. Thanks, Rob. The 19 of Green is a story that starts with the fact that in the fall of 1970, a long time ago, the courts ruled that in my tiny county of Greene County, Georgia, halfway between Atlanta and Augusta on I-20, the courts ruled that there was a white school and a black school, white high school and a black school. They would merge once and for all. They'd been working on integration around the edges. Fall of 1970, it was going to happen. And so I played on the first ever integrated football team in the history of my high school. And we had spring practice getting ready for the fall of 1970. We thought we'd have like 60 guys when we were done. When we were done with spring practice, we had 19 guys. And wow. That's where the 19 of Green comes from. We only had 19 guys playing for Greene County High School. But the story, it's really not about football. I mean, we lost our first two, then won 7 out of 8 to make the playoffs, and had a wonderful season. But it's really not about football. It's about the fact that 53 years ago, a group of guys, 12 white, 7 black, bonded over this football team, and we have stayed in touch ever since. And some of my very best friends, including our black quarterback, Charles Turner, is one of my very, very best friends. So I came across the team picture about 3 years ago, and I said, I wonder what these guys are doing. I said, is there a book here? And I talked to Charles Turner, my quarterback. He said, there's absolutely a book here, and only you can do it. Yeah. And so we did the book, and it's out now, and we're very, very proud of it.
Well, in Tony, again, I always like to go back. The people that did Saturdays in the South, the 8-part series on SEC Network in the fall of 2019, and the editing on that and the cinematography on that was off the charts. But that view of, after World War II, the choices most young men in the South had: go back to work on the farms, in the factories, or college athletics. And you go back to how many people's lives were changed through sports. And then again, when we started to bring in black athletes in the late 60s, early 70s, that more than any federal decision ever pulled everybody together. And sports are I've never seen anything that's more unifying other than a great plate of food. And that's why I love that SEC Network show, True South, the food and the culture. I mean, I don't know how John T. Edge and Wright Thompson don't both weigh 500 pounds. I mean, my God, how fun is that? That's it. But your book, this is what's so neat. And you know what I mean? Like, after the games, outside the locker room, where the players come out and the coaches and all the families are there. This is what your book's really about. Is there's a lot of people from a little town like Dublin, Georgia, or Sandersville, or these little towns that not just the moms and dads and aunts and uncles and grandparents, so many people are pulling for these kids, and they may not even be a fan of that school, but they learn lessons at a young age about teamwork. And that's what your book's about. Is nobody gives a damn what color somebody is or anything like that. We're on the same team, and there's a lot of lessons that can be learned and drawn from this book. I think it's fantastic.
Well, thank you. And I'll tell you a story, Rob, is back on December 9th, we put together a book signing and a team celebration. We put it together in about 3 weeks. And on a Saturday morning at 11 a.m., we had over 80 people turn out for that. And that's a big crowd in Greene County now. And they came out and it just dawned on me that when we were going through it, I said, it's 53 years after this group of guys played their last game together, and we still can rally the community over what we accomplished that year. And here was the neatest thing of all. There are 15 of the original 19, 15 are still alive. Of those 15, 9 were at this celebration. And what we did, instead of just me signing the books, we got a long table, and every player who was there had his name tag, and he signed. And every player has a chapter in the book, and they got to sign the book and be a part of that. We've got some great shots of long. And I said, this is what it's all about. All my teammates, 53 years after we played together, we all had a chance to share in a book signing about our special season. That was an incredible day.
Yeah, and people, you're right. Everybody, it's a story of a team, and I think that's really classy to have everybody sign it and do that. People can order the book from a number of places. What are the best?
Best way to, and I tell this to everybody, go to Amazon, do a search on the 19 of Greene. It'll pop right up, and you can order it right online. That's the easiest way to get the book. We have some book signings around the South, but that is the quickest way to get the book.
Yeah, and another thing is, Brendan, like in Memphis, just Tony got an award this year, and I know he's into a lot of things, but what he does for touchdown clubs and quarterback clubs and going and speaking to them. John David Badur is listening right now out in here in Memphis, and Kim Gordon and guys in the touchdown club. But you promote college football and the good things for it. I thought your PowerPoint presentation back to kick off the college football season at the touchdown club in Memphis was fantastic. I mean, that you keep evolving and getting better and better and better. And even though you're not on CBS or SEC Network now, you're putting out even better work. You're putting out great columns and all. So thank you for sharing time with us. I want to get to something. Always give credit where it's due. You never, ever don't forget to do that. That's one thing that I learned. And it's funny now, Tony, our intern is a sophomore, William Halliday, for the Auburn Plainsman. And I told him about one of my professors who taught me radio, TV, and film writing in a lot of classes, Dr. George Plaskidas. I said, the guy was an all-SEC defensive end at Ole Miss in 1976. And he goes, Mr. Browne, he goes, he's one of my professors. I went, wow.
There you go.
Still there. But I want to get into the Buddy Martin had Urban Meyer on his show here in the last few days talking about the portal and everything going on in college football. And Brendan, if we could listen to those comments, and I want your reaction, Tony, because again, this is stuff I think will resonate with our audience.
Yeah, just 1 second, Rob. I'm pulling it up. I was going to get into Mr. Barnhart's book here. I was going to copy the link in there so people can be able to. Yeah. I'll bring it in right now here. This is Urban Buddy the other day, Tony. You know their relationship well. And they do a show called Best Fridays in Football, and this is just an excerpt of that. We'll just play a minute of it here real quick, and you get a take on what Urban thinks about what's going on in the current status of the transfer portal and all that stuff. Here's Urban.
Networking, maybe getting a less prestigious degree. Those are the concerns I have. Also, when programs are now saving scholarships for simply transfer portal players, that leaves a lot of high school players without scholarships. So the residual effect of this is, it's mounting. Like you said, there's there's over 1,000 players still in that transfer portal without a place to go, is what I was told. And you imagine being the parent of that player or an agent representing that player who encouraged them to transfer, and now they're left without a place to go. So there's a lot of residual effects of these new rules, but there's also some great stuff that's happening. The fact that players the players deserve to get paid name and likeness? Absolutely. It's called capitalism. It's called the American way. But the cheating that's gone on with just I think it's called collectives, where just people give money and they give out their money to players for pay for play. I'm still trying to put my hand around that one. Like, how is that legal? And I think Florida State is in trouble with it. But from my understanding is, the old everybody does it. Everybody does do that.
Yeah, that is good to hear Coach Meyer say that, because that's a thing that people are not talking about at all, is that with coaches holding back scholarships for the transfer portal guys, by definition, you can only sign 25. By definition, you're going to sign fewer high school players. It's really not all that complicated. And now all of a sudden, a guy who thought he was going to play at the FBS level is playing a level down. And so that is an issue. I don't know what the answer is to it, but he's absolutely right. That is an issue.
Yeah, he's had to seemingly that, he's laid off, because I've done the podcast with Buddy almost the entire football season, and he's sort of laid off commenting on it. I think just kind of get his vibe for it. But now we see that's for the first time he's really come out and said something bold about it, because I think it's obvious. But do you think that it chases Nick Saban off? Do you think it chases guys like Urban Meyer off? How do you think this is changing how coaching is being effective? Because coaches want to win, but now we have to have. Do we think we have to have a different kind of coach that's going to come in now? And what's your take on that, Tony?
Well, there's no question that it's an issue. I don't think it drove Nick Saban out of coaching. I think Nick Saban decided the timing was right, and for him, he would rather leave a year too early than a year too late. I think that was the thing with Nick Saban. And here's the thing: if you're a coach, you've got two options when you're faced with particularly the NIL stuff. You can either adjust and figure out how to make it work for you, or you can complain about it. Okay.
Yeah.
And in the history of college football, you guys know the history of the game. The coaches who adapt, Bear Bryant in 1971, the coaches who adapt are the ones that end up surviving in this business. And I don't have an answer for the NIL, because there isn't one, but all you got to do is watch what's been going on the last week or two, that players are suddenly looking up and what Ohio State has been up to. I just think the stuff, there's good reporting today in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution from Chip Towers, who you guys know. And he's got some good reporting, and there's no other conclusion to say that some of these Caleb Downs, and I don't keep up with this stuff, but there's no question with him going to Ohio State, there is very little doubt that he was told, whatever Georgia gives you in terms of an NIL deal, we will absolutely exceed it. And that's not the way it's supposed to work.
Yeah.
But I'm afraid that is the way it does work.
Yeah.
Well,
I hate it. I mean, bottom line is you've got Lane Kiffin calling it what it is. He says it's pay for play. And when you talk to people off the record that are running these collectives at different schools, it's a nightmare. And I'm saying it's unsustainable. And Tony, in the financial markets, you can't go charge 8 points or 10% on a bond trade. You can't do that. There are rules that you used to have people do it, but the SEC, the Securities Exchange Commission, not the Southeastern Conference, changed all that. If you leave one firm, go to another, you may be paid up front, and it's a 5-year contract. If you leave 1 year into the 5-year contract, you owe 80% of that money that you were paid up front. So I got to go back in time, Tony, with when you look at professional sports. We referenced the Yankees and the Dodgers. Brendan and I did earlier. If they could spend George Steinbrenner, when he died in 2010, remember, that was the 1 year there was no estate tax, but they took away stepped up cost basis. So they're going to get you one way or the other. But what other? We don't want the government to get involved in this. That could be beyond scary. But what are you hearing maybe behind the scenes without, jeopardizing any relationships you have, but that's being done to try to rein this in?
First of all, I don't think you can rein it in. What you have to do is come up with a new structure. You have to come up with some sort of plan. First of all, college football needs to have its own enforcement structure, its own structure with a conference, with a commissioner. All those things need to have happened. The other thing that has to happen, and nobody wants to hear this, but the fact of the matter is, until you come up with a plan that allows the athletes to share in the revenue that's being generated, until you do that, none of this stuff is going to work. I had somebody call me the other day, wrote me a note. So why don't we give everybody $100,000 and be done with it? He said, well, let me explain you why that won't work. Because if you do that, the star quarterback at whatever school you want to name is going to say, I can make a lot more in the free market than $100,000. Well, but people say, well, we don't want that. And the courts are saying it's not about what you want, college football fan or college football administrator. It's about what the law says you must do. And I have seen no solution to this that did not involve the violation of antitrust law. Okay, and if you restrict the market, it's basic 101. If you restrict someone's ability to make money in the free market, whereas coaches are participants in the free market, if you restrict the players in any way, you're going to go to court and you're going to lose.
Oh yeah.
Doesn't you guys think, in my opinion, now we were talking on it, talking about this last night. I was doing Buddy's show, and she's been off for the week. But, what do we think about the fact that when this initially come in, name, image, likeness, right? You have the ability to make money as your persona, right? We understand that. We're in media. We get all that stuff. But what seemingly has been coming in, it's like, but what about these collectives, right? And then these giant donations, right? Like anybody can come to my website, give $5, give $10, give all this kind of thing. It doesn't seem to be very structured because athlete can't go and wear a Gator logo and support Coca-Cola on the middle of the swamp, right? There are rules that the university has that says, well, we're not going to take our, like you said, there's no revenue share for them in any sort of selling of jerseys or whatever it may be. Although, we saw some of that with what Billy Napier just recently, did during the season was he came up with Gator Made, which is a way to get all the athletes paid with, it's sort of not really taking off, and we see some of it with Florida Victorious and that kind of thing. And I'm just using University of Florida as an example, but how does this sort of work? I mean, doesn't it seem like we could say, hey, Joe, especially what's happened with this Rashada deal and the NCAA investigation now, which is the kid that was the quarterback that was offered $13.8 million and then ended up at ASU, and his whole career changed because, Hugh Hathcock didn't have enough money to give him the $300,000. I mean, you know what I mean? It got all of this convoluted mess. Now Florida's under investigation for something I don't think either they didn't know they were doing or not doing. Because some billionaires just want to, flex some muscle. So in my opinion, it's like, how do we start saying, hey, this is a corporate deal. You're making money. That's on you. You make that money. But, there's some rules to the road as far as how you can, sponsor. You can't wear your, Nike sneakers or whatever it may be, because that goes against something else. But you can't just take $6 million from Joe Blow Millionaire, and that seems to be really where we're going south here, because corporate America doesn't seem to be following it. There's not a lot of deals. These collectives are not doing their job finding the corporate entities to come in and do sponsorships because they don't know how they make money and how they can promote. And that's seemingly where I've sort of seen where things have definitely started to veer off the road. And we're seeing that at Florida with this investigation.
Well, here's the distinction, guys. There's a difference between collectives putting money together so that NIL opportunities may be funded. That's one issue, but it's an entirely different proposition to take this funding as an inducement to get you to come to their school. Those are two very different things. And the way it was supposed to work is these collectives allowed alumni and people to pitch in so that when it came time to offer NIL opportunities, there would be a pot of money there to fund those opportunities. But what is happening now, I think we all can agree, what is happening now is the word is getting, if you come to my school, I promise you will get this. And that is a violation of the rules. You got to get caught. You got to get caught now. And I think that's happened some, but I think the fact that some people are already starting to have penalties come down, or certainly allegations come down, I should say, that is the big distinction.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, let's switch gears and talk about Jim Harbaugh. I don't know him. You probably have met him before.
Well, only once. Only met him once.
Give me your opinion on what's going on with Michigan from 40,000 feet above. I mean, you see his mom and his dad and his brother, John, with the Ravens. And I'm going, this guy is he's not liked by, certainly Ohio State doesn't like him. But what do you think's behind all of this? Because in the SEC, like, we're so on top of each other. I can talk to one of my favorite families, the May family from Tuscaloosa. They know Kirby Smart and his wife very well. They, for 9 years, they know them. They know him. They really, really like him. These are all Auburn people. And, we don't hate each other. I mean, if I saw Nick Saban, man, I'd say I went to mass at the Saban Student Catholic Center that you had a big party in. I mean, we respect one another. Is there a different kind of rivalry up there? Give me your thoughts on that.
Well, I'm the last person you should ask about personalities in the Big Ten, such as it. All I can say about Jim Harbaugh is he's two things.
Yeah,
he's quirky now. He's on the quirky side. Okay, but the guy is a hell of a football coach.
Yes,
right? He really is. And silly me, I thought Washington was going to win the national championship, and I thought they were going to beat them. And about 5 minutes into that game, I said,
"We all did for a minute."
Oh no! No, we are smash mouthing right at the. I said, this ain't going to happen.
Yeah,
really good team, and you got to give him credit for this.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is, he came back to Michigan, had his salary cut in half. Come back and built a national championship program. So you got to give him credit for that. But the other, but I got to admit, I've been doing this a long time. I haven't seen a season where the head coach gets suspended for the first 3 games of the regular season and the last 3 games of the regular season, and then goes. I mean, that is, shall we say, unusual.
Yes. Well, the only thing weirder than that was the 1970 Gator Bowl when Archie Manning's arm was in a cast.
Yep.
And Shug Jordan had an emergency appendectomy the night before the Gator Bowl. And Johnny Vaught, I believe, had a heart attack. Bruiser Kennard coached against Paul Davis, Auburn's defensive coordinator. Auburn won that game 35-28. And even weirder is the only American college bowl game ever played in a communist country. Well, that was Cuba in 1937, the Rumba Bowl, and Auburn tied Villanova 7 apiece. But I wasn't there, but my dad was 9, and he's listening right now. But Tony, I mean, and I know we just got a few minutes, but thank you so much for coming on here with us. And I didn't mean to, I just threw the Harbaugh thing out there because I trust your opinion because I followed you as long as I've been following football. And Harbaugh just strikes me he's very competitive. He tucks his sweatshirts in. He wears white socks, and he's got the glasses. He's just
he is goofy as all goofy is goofy, man.
Yeah,
like, he is the goofiest guy. He's the guy that he's like my daughter says, he's cringy because he says things sometimes, and you're like, I don't know.
Well, there. Well, but it's like when Buddy Martin's on the show. The first time Buddy Martin was on the round table with us, Tony and Brendan, he gets on there. He reminded me of the coach in Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer with the whistle and the hat. All right, everybody round up in here. And everybody goes, get that guy back on. I love him. He's just bam, bam, bam. And Tony, you and Lauren Smith and these writers, and Scott Rabelais was on with us a couple of weeks ago. It's so critical that you keep writing. And before you go, you mentioned, and I did not get a chance to see it because Brendan and I were inside the screen working before the show. you wrote a column today that you mentioned. Let people know about all the great work that you're doing and the media guys, because it's 150 plus years of experience, and you cannot make that up if you hadn't done it.
Well, our website is TMG College Sports. Just go to Google and do a search on it. And I posted a column really late last night, and to hear I have a lot of Alabama friends, and to hear them tell it, Alabama just might as well give up football. Okay, I mean it's over. It's over. We're never going to be good again. And then and I'm saying, wait a minute, was it over when Frank Thomas had to quit because of high blood pressure? Was it over when Wallace Wade left Alabama to go to Duke? Was it over when Bear Bryant, when Ears Whitworth had 3 awful seasons, but some guy named Paul Bryant came home, and was it over? And Gene Stallings comes in, win a national. It's not over at Alabama. Now, is Alabama going to go through a transition? You betcha. Okay. But I think Kalen DeBoer is a very good football coach, and now we got to see how he does in recruiting, because as you guys know better than anybody, recruiting is hand-to-hand combat in the Southeastern Conference, and some guys adjust and some guys don't. Brian Harsin didn't. Okay. Let's see what happens, but I think the guy's a really good football coach. But I listed all these moments in history for Alabama where everybody was throwing up their hands, but Alabama always came back. And then they, in 2007, they hired this guy Saban from the Miami Dolphins, and boom, there you go.
Well, sorry, but we were talking to Urban about that same thing the other day, and we kind of posed the question. Well, how would you go about it? He said, well, how did you recruit Tim Tebow? He said, well, God, we talked in text all day long. We knew his parents, went to his living room, all that kind of stuff. And he says, now what all the coaches are saying, it's really just about how much, right? Yep. And I said, how does that affect you, Coach? As a coach now that you really don't have as intimate of a relationship as you used to have. When Tim Tebow, he said, when Tebow came in, he knew everything about Tebow, what he liked to eat, his favorite color, all this stuff. He says it definitely affects of the head coach and the coaching staff's knowledge of that player and the buy-in of what happens to that player. How do you promote them getting a college degree, being good men, all these sort of things. It definitely makes it just more of just sort of a clinical experience, like more of a, not as close. And don't you think that would be true to some extent?
Well, look at it this way. I think all the things that you mentioned, Brendan, about the interpersonal relationships and knowledge and all that, there's a place for all of that still. What that will do is that will get you in the door to be one of 3 finalists. Okay. Now you're in the house and there's 2 other coaches you're competing against. Now is when NIL kicks in. It's the decision maker. But if you don't do your homework, you're not even going to be among the list that the family's thinking about.
Yeah, and I'll just say this, Tony, before you go. Think about Eddie Meat Cleaver Weaver, Nate Webster, Andre Pulpwood Smith. I mean, I'm an Auburn guy. I remember as much about Georgia, because if I hadn't gotten into Auburn, I was going to go to Georgia or Clemson. That's always, not that I'm saying I love those rivalries and those schools, but think about Hugh Nall and those guys. When they get together for a reunion, how close those guys are compared to the guys today. When you fight and sacrifice and bleed with one another, like the book, The 19 of Green, Brendan, awesome job. That's why we hired him as our executive producer. Now we got the graphics up here.
By the way, guys, if you're seeing this right here, you click on this QR code, it's going to take you to the Amazon link that Tony was talking about, and you can buy the book. You just take your phone, click right on it, and if you see it in chat room, you can click on the link, and it'll take you right to where you can buy the book. It's I've read actually part of it. It's a great read, and if you care about all this stuff, it's worth it. So just letting everybody know, just cue on that QR code, and Tony's going to give me 50% of all earnings. So
there you go. Well, I'm just impressed that all of us know what a QR code is. So,
hey man, you know me. I know all this stuff. I'm the brains behind the Buddy Martin, right? So
yes, and we love it. I mean, hey, listen, but Tony, you know what I mean about those guys getting together how tight they are. I mean, I lived in Columbus and Auburn for 9 years, right there in the bi-state area, the bi-cities. But that's what you want. That's what you think about. But your book is awesome, and we're going to talk about it again every time you're on, and other books that you're going to write in the future. But thank you so much for being on here with us today. And again, let them know how they can follow you and all the great work you're doing.
Well, the reason I put this column out, I knew, Rob, that you would enjoy it because I have my weekly reference to Merle Haggard. Whenever I can get Merle Haggard mentioned in my columns, and I said, to quote the great Merle Haggard, when it comes to Alabama football, are the good times over for good? Okay.
Yeah.
And that's the title of the column. Just go to TMG College Sports, do a search, and the answer to the question is no. The good times are not over for good, but there's, as we say, there's going to be a transition at Alabama.
Yeah, we'll work through it. All right.
We know
Tony,
how those things go in Florida.
Yeah, that's right. Tony, thank you so much for being on here. We really appreciate it. Have a great week.
All right, guys. Thanks.
Thanks.
All right. Hey, Yancy Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline. Catch them Monday nights, Sport 56 WHBQ, 6 p.m., and also all over the great Magnolia State on Super Talk Mississippi. They do a phenomenal job. Yancy Porter, Gary Darby, Harry Harrison, Gordon Ford, Chuck Rounswell, the Ole Miss Spirit. One of the best guys in the business, just relentless in putting out great content. But, you know, when you talk with Yancy, born over in Vicksburg, but raised in Hattiesburg. Brendan, you got to speak Mississippi now. It's just
I got to Mississippi before.
Okay. Hattiesburg. But you're from Ocala, Florida.
I'm not. Stop telling me I'm from Ocala. I'm not from Ocala. I'm not from the People's Republic of Boulder either. Okay. Get me out of that. I'm from Littleton, Colorado. Not from there. Born in St. Pete. Listen, my father's Buddy Martin. We moved every 4 years. It was because we were born in St. Pete, then lived in New York, then lived in Colorado, then moved to Jacksonville, then back to Colorado. So I was Littleton and Denver, and then I went to a bunch of schools because I wasn't very good at it. And then, and then ended up all Boston and all Florida, all over, and then finally settled 2017 in Ocala. Grateful to be here. Family of 100 years that's been in this town, so
Longer
it's awesome.
than that.
Yeah, probably a lot. We're riding around with Bibles and doing like circuit,
That's right.
Horseback preachers. So, we all that. Hey, Yancy's in the green room, Rob. Do you want to go to him now, or do you need to go to break?
Bring on the pride of Hattiesburg over in Pine Country in Mississippi. Yancy, how you doing this morning?
Doing great. I can see actual roads now. Getting all this snow and ice out of here and try to get the kids back to school. They're still out here in Oxford, Mississippi. They've been out the last week and a half. So just trying to get things back to normal.
Well, when I was in 7th grade in Memphis, we got out 7 straight days. We had a snow and ice storm so bad. It was about 77, 76, 77. And our parents were going a little bit Section 8. It was crazy. But, yeah, we got it looks like this morning it's raining. We got 6 inches of snow. Now we're getting 6 inches of rain. But we need something to get rid of the ice because duck season goes on through the first week of February. And I say that because we have the youth hunt. But there's a lot happening real fast in college sports. We've had Chris Lee, Southeastern 14, on in the first segment. Tony Barnhart, Mr. College Football, on right before you came on. Brendan Martin, our executive producer down in Ocala, Florida, is on with us. And been talking a lot about the portal, NIL, all the craziness going on with, and I hope you'll be able to stay on with us because Rodney Orr-Tider Insider is going to be on in the next segment. And love having y'all two on together because we're all fans of different schools, but one thing that we can agree on in the South is we love great food. We love college football and we do love each other. I mean, I think we learned during the year of the pandemic when they tried to take away the game, we were like, you know what? We need each other. Ole Miss, let's talk about some Ole Miss basketball right now before we do football because Ole Miss is gaining a lot of momentum right now in football. But basketball, you talked about it last year. Chris Beard coming in. They've had some rough road losses. They lost at Auburn Saturday. But like Bruce Pearl said after the game, he goes, listen, we got to go over there in a couple of weeks, and I can assure you we got a little bit excited out there. They're going to be remembering that. And, Chris Beard is one of the best coaches in America. They'll fix it. But up to this point, is he doing it just by instilling in these guys, play out of your minds? Because they've got 15 wins already against 3 or 4 losses. And as the season goes on, it'll get tougher. But to this point, if you're an Ole Miss basketball fan, you've got to be happy.
Yeah, you do. I think maybe expectations were a little too high when they were 13-0, 15-1. Now they're 15-3. They just don't get any production down in the paint. They get block shots, and that's talked about a little too much, in my opinion. But the rebounding and the offensive production is not there, and it gets exposed when they go on the road. For some reason, the home court advantage in basketball is unlike any other sport. It's truly an advantage, but your weaknesses get exposed when you play on the road. And that's Ole Miss's weakness right now. They don't get much offensive production down low, specifically from the centers. You would think 7'1", 7'5", you would be at least getting combined out of those two centers 12 to 14 points, and you're getting about 4 points. So it's a problem. But at home, they're able to shoot it well from the outside. They're able to play better defensively on the perimeter, and on the road, they're not right now. So that's kind of where they are.
Well, who has success on the road in the SEC, really? Not many people. Auburn won at Arkansas, and they won at Vanderbilt, but it's a tough league. I heard something interesting listening to Andy Burcham in the Auburn Basketball Network broadcast while I watched the game Saturday. Ole Miss has the shortest player on a roster in college basketball at 5'5", and the tallest player at 7'5". How about that for both ends of the spectrum? I'd like to see that team photo.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember Wayne Brandt, that coach under Rod Barnes back with the Provide Posse back in the 90s, early 2000s. That's actually Wayne Brandt's son, the guy that's 5'5". He's a walk-on player from Jackson, and good little player. Just, he's tough at that size. But, that's Wayne Brandt's son. So that is another interesting fact.
Well, you look at this 5 years or 6 years Kermit Davis was there. Everybody loves that guy. Why do you think it didn't work for him? And Chris Beard came in, and they've got 15 wins, and the conference schedule's going to take its toll, but there's something different. And again, Kermit Davis was at 16-year run at Middle Tennessee State. He had a lot of success. And Ole Miss is a place where you can win in basketball. Andy Kennedy did 12 years. He averaged like 21 wins a season.
I think a lot of it's really a point guard. I think, Kermit's a hell of a coach, first of all. He didn't forget how to coach those last couple of years at Ole Miss. But he had highly ranked point guards in there in the system, but they were more of a scoring first mentality. And then when you get a point guard in there like they got now, Juju, that is more a facilitator and really finds open guys on the perimeter, it gets better shots for everybody. And the point guards under Kermit the last couple of years, a lot of injuries, played in fact to 2 of them specifically. And I really think it just came down to point guard.
Recruiting wise for next year, basketball players know who Chris Beard is all over the country. They know who Wes Flanagan is. He's been with Chris Beard, went to Auburn, played at Auburn, coached at Auburn. He's back with him together. They've got 2 right there of the best basketball recruiters in America. How's it going to this point?
Yeah, man, they're only going after the best of the best right now. I believe they only have 1 commitment. He's the number 6 player in the country. Another 7'2" guy, Bowles, his name, So they're going after the cream of the crop. They're trying to recruit like Kentucky's recruiting. So we'll see how it turns out in the end. But you got to remember now, Beard was a little ahead of his time in this transfer before there was the portal. Even back in the Texas Tech days, he was getting 4 or 5 transfers a year when they had to sit out a year. Sometimes there'd be a loophole and he was able to get them immediately eligible. But he's been doing this for a while, so I look for him to stay very active in the portal. I look for Ole Miss to sign 3-4 more guys in the portal this year, and then they'll sprinkle in 3 or 4 high school recruits. But there'll be a lot of turnover every year as long as you stay active in the portal. And but that's just his system. Again, he was a little ahead of the time, so he's been doing the transfer route before it became so popular.
Yeah. In the first and second segment with Tony Barnhart in this morning's show, Brendan Martin played some excerpts from an interview his dad, Buddy Martin of the Buddy Martin Show and GatorbaitMedia.com had with Urban Meyer. And they talk with him every week. And they talked about the portal and what it's doing to college football. And Urban Meyer said the bad thing is that colleges are setting aside X number of scholarships for portal players that used to go to high school players. Because how'd you like to be the parents of these high school kids that have worked their tails off and there's no scholarships because it's all in the portal? And he said, even with that being said, there's still over 1,000 kids in the portal that hadn't been picked up yet. I thought the number was, well, if you go over the October 15th of 2018, when the portal became the law of the land, it's thousands more than that. So your thoughts about those comments by Coach Meyer?
Well, it's true, but it is what it is. That old saying, that is, the toothpaste is out of the tube. There's really no going back, in my opinion. But that you got to get some high school guys in there at some point, right? I think once you flush it out after a couple of years of this portal, I think that it will open the gates back to high school players more than it is right now. It's just bad timing for players coming out of high school these last couple of years.
Yeah, well, we know that Cam Carmack, he gets the award. Move over Blutarski from Animal House. Step aside, Tommy Boy. This guy's going to play at Miami this year. He started at Oregon. He will be playing, you ready, his 9th year of college football. I mean, that's undergrad, and then that's 5 years of that's undergrad of college, and that's 4 years of medical school, and you're into your first year as a resident. I mean, shit. I mean, it's just incredible. This guy, he's certainly a mature, but you know what? Didn't Chris Winkie from St. Paul, Minnesota, when he played after his baseball career was over, he won the Heisman Trophy at Florida State when he was 27, maybe 28 years old. It's not the first time we've seen this. And after Korea and after World War II and after the Korean War, we had a lot of older guys coming back to play college football that had been in real combat for several years.
Yeah, and I think I think we have one more year after this year of the COVID years, guys that were fifth-year seniors.
Yeah.
So that's really going to start opening the gates. You were talking about earlier about, high school players not having the opportunities to come in. It's because that, these college players, you can still flush them in, from so many years. So for the portal, those guys are going to be graduating next year. There will be no more COVID year, and that'll really open the door again.
There you go. So this coming year, 2024, will be the last year. Okay, and then it'll go back to because I mean, even 35, 40 years ago, we had the occasional 6th year college football player. I remember Curtis Scooby-Doo Stewart, running back from Jeff Davis High School in Montgomery at Auburn. A couple of other 6th-year players, but Those were very rare to find. All right,
Very rare.
let's switch gears. And what y'all talk about last night on Rebel Yell Hotline, which, by the way, you can catch Monday nights, 6 p.m., Sports 56 WHBQ in Memphis, and also all over the great state of Mississippi on Super Talk Mississippi. It is a great show.
Well, I mean, look, right now, everybody they want to know about the portal. There's a lot of hype for next year for Ole Miss, really kind of rounding out the positions that needed to be addressed, which is cornerback. Obviously, they graduated both their corners this year, and they lost a couple of the corners that they had signed out of the portal. One went to the NFL, Mississippi State player, the other one from Illinois. A couple of classes would not transfer over to Ole Miss. And that's what you got to look at, too, with the portal, right? Every school has different requirements. So they had to go and get two more corners. They got one out of Alabama, Trey Amos. That was kind of their third corner this year. And then they've got another corner out of Michigan. So, you even lose players that you sign out of the portal. So it's a never-ending situation. And then you got to remember the portal window is closed for everybody but Alabama and Washington right now. But let's say Jim Harbaugh at Michigan goes to the NFL. Well, guess what? Now the portal opens up for the Michigan players for 30 days. And then who does Michigan hire, right? Whatever school they get their head coach from, that school's window opens up for 30 days. So it's, we're not done. If Jim Harbaugh goes to Michigan, this is going to open up for 2 or 3 or 4 more schools, portal windows for them. So I don't like that ruling. I don't think that's fair because your coach leaves, that you get a 30-day window at whatever date it is for everybody to come pluck your players. I think that's just snowballing it. To me, and now this is just to me, and I'm not a big conspiracy theorist, but I think the NCAA is trying to cause so much chaos that they can come back in a year or two and say, okay, you wanted it where we didn't have any control and everybody could do whatever. Well, you saw what happened. Now let us come back in and rule it with an iron fist. So to me, they're really just trying to cause a lot of chaos because the Alabama should not have had a 30-day window for their players, for other schools to come recruit them. I just think it's ridiculous.
Well, it's called the Hegelian principle. You create chaos, and then you come in and look like the hero when you try to fix it, but you really screw it up more than anything. I'll tell you what else. Think about all the people who have given money to these NIL collectives. In this case, Alabama. Could be the Red Elephant Club, which is not their collective, but they have more than one NIL collective. How mad would you be if you had given $50,000 or $100,000 to that collective and the kids that you invested your money into walked? You cannot do that in the business world. We talked about it earlier. You don't go buy a house with a 15 or a 30-year mortgage on a handshake. There's a few signatures you have to sign. And Yancy, nobody. If you look on ESPN and Fox on the big national stages, nobody's challenging this stuff. They think it's cool. And again, I am all about capitalism. But that being said, you cannot make 10% on a bond trade. You can't do that. You can't. There's governing rules. It's how it works. But people right now, as Jackie Sherrill said 32 years ago at the University Club for the Touchdown Club meeting in the fall of 1992, he foresaw 4 super conferences back then, 65 teams. And that 65th, will be Notre Dame because they're not really in a conference. But that's where we're going. Then we're going to have a national championship for the other 68 schools. And as Jackie Sherrill said, it'll be just as important for them. But is that what we want? I mean, what I love about college sports is March Madness. That's where you really see the populist uprising. Everybody, 357 schools have a chance. It's not that I wanted Kentucky to lose, but just for the average fan out there to watch St. Peter's beat Kentucky with a coach making $200,000 a year, and all but 2 players on that Kentucky roster at the time had NIL deals worth more than $200,000. That was a cool story, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, there you go. All right. So looking at Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin. You know, there are rumors that for the last 3 weeks, he's been on a fishing boat in Isla Morada Key, Longboat Key, Boca Raton. I mean, people, are you that naive? You know he's got his cell phone, his laptop. He's staying on top of this stuff. Who runs the day-to-day operations? Because I can't believe Derek Nix left Ole Miss to go to Auburn. Not that Auburn's not a good place, but he was like Joe Witt at Auburn for 25 years, or Gus White at Alabama. I just don't understand. And is anything, what can you count on right now in college athletics? But who runs the day-to-day operations? Who's the XO or the command master sergeant of Ole Miss football?
Well, I mean, that's a great question. I think really it depends on what side of the ball you're talking about as far as recruiting. I mean, if you're going on the defensive side of the ball, obviously Golding and I think Joyner are very heavily involved. With Nix, that was a hit. He was really kind of him and Kelvin Bolden really kind of ran the offensive side of the ball.
Okay.
And Kelvin Bolden could be getting promoted either to the tight end or the wide receiver coach. He's really kind of like a young Nix, but back to Nix, look, you get an opportunity to go from a position coach to a coordinator and almost triple your salary, even being at Ole Miss for that long. If he ever wants to become a head coach somewhere, you got to take that jump. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's back one day at Ole Miss, but I do not blame him at all for moving from a position coach to a coordinator job within the SEC.
I tell people this and their heads spin. Got a lot of Ole Miss friends. $1.5 billion academic fundraising campaign, $500 million for athletics. Where did Ole Miss finish on that?
Well, the athletics, as we talked about, the academic, the $1.5 billion has been raised for over a year now. That's done.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
For the academic, for the athletic part, they're still, they put that on the back burner because of the NIL. They didn't want to be competing with the NIL groups. Yeah. And so I think they've scaled that back. From what I've heard is that they've scaled that back from about 350 there, 500 to about 350 to all the way down to about 175 million for now. They just started $45 million worth of projects for the women's facilities, different from tennis to volleyball to soccer to a new softball field. And then they're going to get back to the men's, but they got the big project done there with the IPF. They put in about $50 million more into that facility. Okay. So the big project, though, the bulk of the money was going to go to the west side of the football stadium, and that's when they're going to pick it up. They got to just figure out how do we not compete with the collective group? How do we, where does this NIL deal go? Are the schools going to be allowed to kind of take over these collectives, which is what they want? I'm still not sure that's the best policy. Once you get big bureaucracy taking over things, it's just not run the same. But, that's what the schools want. Obviously, they want to be in control of all of it. So if they're allowed to start taking over the collectives and handle the NIL themselves, that will speed up the process of getting the rest of the athletic facilities done that they wanted to get done.
Another question for you. I got to ask you this. How big is the Grove Collective? How many, number one, how big is the Grove Collective now? And number two, how many NIL collectives does Ole Miss have as of this show?
Just one. There used to be several different collectives, but when they Walker Jones and and William Linton and those guys that really started the Grove Collective. William, they unified all the different collectives and just have one. When you have splintered in different collectives, it really gets messy. So just one collective, and how big is it? They're close to 10,000 members.
Wow. Okay. So Yancy just got about 5 minutes. Well, and actually, and I hope you're going to stay on with Rodney Orr, because we got a lot of stuff to ask him. I'm with you. Just because your coach leaves, remember, and Brendan, you've grown up, you know a lot of coaches, they don't start out making 8, 9, 10 million a year. They have to work their ass off, and things have to fall in line for them to even get to where they are. It didn't just, we're allowing the narrative to be taken away by the spoiled brats. Okay. I'm all about being paid. If I were to be in charge of the NCAA, or could make the decision on NIL collectives and what NIL is paid to student athletes, I'd say, here's how we're going to do it. First off, I don't give a damn about all your posse and your handlers that you got that are nothing more than parasites that are sucking the life out of you. Okay? And I don't get them out of the way. Ole Miss or Auburn or Tennessee, whatever, are not the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare. Their job is not to provide money for 15 or 20 people. You're signing a student athlete. You're there to get an education. You can make a living with your hands. You make millions with your mind. Hit the books. I'm just going to say I would do age-banded trusts and incentive-based trust. Age-banded, you get the money at age 25, 30, and 35. Equal disbursements, 35, 30, and then 35. The second thing I would do, incentive-based trust. When you get your degree from this university, you get this much money. That's how it works in the real world. I'm in my 33rd year as a financial advisor. I can promise you this. We have never had a family that has $50 million or $100 million ever come out and say, let's go ahead and give $20 million to our 18-year-old son who's a freshman at Ole Miss. Where's the party? $30 million to our 19-year-old and $50 million to our 21-year-old. Nobody does that. Why not do what I'm recommending, Yancy Porter?
Well, you got to look at it. You can go into age discrimination, right? It's all legal. That's what this is all about. But the problem is this was supposed to have been a revenue sharing situation. That's where the real issues have always fallen, is that the colleges have gotten 100% of the money and the athletes have gotten zero. Now, some say, yes, you do get scholarships, and that counts during a 4-year education as $152,000 or $200,000. So not zero, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And now it's become collectives where the alumni, the fans, are chipping in money to essentially just go buy players. And it was supposed to be on image, name, image, and likeness. And that's really not anything what it's to do now, right? Everything is about, collectives, everybody just chipping in money. So the onus is on the fans again, as it always is. And the colleges are still keeping 100% of the revenue. And that's not what it's supposed to have been about. And eventually, but the players right now, they're in a pickle, because if they go after the revenue, they might be taking a pay cut. So, there's not really any lawsuits that are trying to get into revenue sharing with the colleges, because right now, the way that the numbers are crunching, they're probably coming out better doing it this way and just getting the fans to chip in money instead of taking a cut of the revenue.
Yeah, well,
there's sorry, Yancy, this is Brendan Martin here, but that's sort of what we were talking about with Tony Barnhart, and we were discussing last night with Shane Matthews, who's on our show, former Gator quarterback, Franz Beard, and we were just discussing these same things. But what we're sort of having on top of all, of this is that there's no way for a player to really cash in on the NIL, right? Because the university has got all the rights to using logos, jerseys, all that stuff. You can't go put on your football uniform and go out and sell Coca-Cola, right? You can't go out onto the field. And I asked Scott Strickland this almost a year ago in a luncheon, who is the AD at Florida. I said, so how do you regulate on their social media? Because that's the only way that they're going to make any sort of money in a lot of ways, legally is to be really robust social media. He said, well, the funny thing is a lot of our best NIL athletes who make the most money are, say, women's soccer players or people that understand, and I'm not saying women understand better than men. I'm just saying that they found that because they've come in with a robust social media platform already in high school or whatever. That's the only way to really cash in. And now that's not, although you can make a bunch of money being YouTuber and all that kind of stuff, you're never going to make, millions of dollars, coming in unless unless I'm Coca-Cola or I'm whatever. And I'm going to say, look, I want you to sit there and promote my product as a Florida Gator or as a LSU Tiger, as an Auburn, whatever, with your uniform on and saying, or wearing my Nike shoes or whatever. They don't have the ability to do that. And that was sort of the whole idea of the NIL, at least the Supreme Court thought that. So now here we are. There's no way to cash in for these players. University's not allowed to say anything or have any sort of oversight on, hey, we don't want to pay this much for that guy or whatever, because that's not what it's supposed to be like. Yet that's what we're having. That's what Florida's facing right now with, how much, people talk from the collective to the university. I mean, come on now. I mean, like, it is all about, well, how much money's in the kitty? Can we afford this player or could we not? Because it's no longer recruit me, talk to mom and dad, be, interested in my life, really buy in on the program. You're getting your degree from this great school. Now it's just about how much, and there needs to be some sort of oversight, in my opinion, there.
Well, Yancy,
that's why I think it's such a joke that the NCAA is investigating, I believe, Florida State, for facilitating between a coach and the university with the NIL. Come on.
Well, even Florida's under investigation right now too.
I'm sorry. Is it Florida and not Florida
State? Florida State just got fined, for $12,500, and now Florida's getting looked at the Rashada deal, which is the quarterback that they were offered, something like $13.8 million, but two millionaires who were having sort of a peeing contest in the woods to see who had more money. And then one guy didn't really have money because he was on a divorced lady, and his wife sold cookies and she didn't really give him the money. And then all of a sudden, when there was time to make the signing bonus for $300 and some $1,000, there was no money. So now everyone's sort of scrambling. So they go down to the old bag families that used to drop off bags of cash that no one ever wanted to admit that was really going on. And that whole network is like, hey, we don't want anything to do with this, So what I've found sort of in our investigative reporting is that there are collectives and now there are these secret collectives. There are these executive collectives that nobody really knows about, but they're the ones that control all this big booster money.
Well, and that group there is the ones that have always taken care of business behind the scenes.
Absolutely.
And what people don't understand is that this did not cut out the bags, as you call it. Those are still there.
Absolutely.
Of fact, the networks of people that I talk to, they're paying even more money than they used to pay. Because remember, that bag is what? Tax-free. And also remember that bag also can be paid before classes start. So to get them to sign, there's still schools that want to get that edge, right? So it's a lot different when they say, hey, when you start classes in X amount of months, you start getting paid this much a month, versus saying, hey, when you start classes in X amount of months, you get paid this. And guess what? You get paid this to sign. And it's tax-free. So the bags are still there. It's all out of control. It's
all out of control.
Yeah, I mean, look, the NCAA loves it. Like I said at the beginning, they want this chaos because they want it because the NCAA had been painted as the Boogie Bear with no control over at anything, had no teeth, and they wanted total chaos where they could come in at the end and rule it with an iron fist again. That's their goal in the end means.
Well, in the business world, you have what are called Chinese firewalls, which, keep information from getting from one. There's a lot of things that can be done. But if anyone thinks that the coaches and the university administrators have no contact at all with these collectives, you're really stupid.
That's a joke.
You're really, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, and with Florida and Florida State's cases, and they're going to say that was a violation with the Florida State, the coach that facilitated, the recruit to the collective or whatever. I mean, these schools are involved everywhere, every Power 5 they know. You can go to the AD and he can probably recite you what every player's making per month. I mean, that is just absolutely ridiculous. So they're going to just pick and choose who they want to battle with. Again, that's why the NCAA became the Boogie Bear. That's why they became with no teeth, is because of them doing stuff. And just like with the Ole Miss situation, they were given level 1 infractions for an own player sleeping on a coach's couch while his apartment was getting ready because it had to be repainted. Come on now. I mean, the stuff that they do is that's why they're in the position they're in now. I don't have any pity for them.
They've pencil whipped people for decades. A guy, you remember in 1986, Alabama and Ohio State played in the kickoff classic up in the Meadowlands. I remember this very well. Alabama had a tragedy. One of their players from Phoenix City drowned, and they were going to take the team over on buses to the funeral in Phoenix City, and the NCAA went after Alabama. I mean, it's stuff like that. And I'm reading some of the comments. Kelly Leak, Bad News Bear, I'm done with the NCAA, and colleges should be too. That's where we are. Organizations, if you think about it, my dad told me that when he first started practicing architecture, Memphis was half the size it is now. And the city zoning or building commission, whatever, had a handful of people in the office, maybe 15 or 20. Now when the city's twice as big, they have close to 300. I mean, come on. That is a lot of, let's be honest, a lot of people in government positions are UOP, unemployable outside of politics. But we better be careful. The NCAA and a lot of these college administrators are no different than the bloated federal government bureaucracy. You give them $100 million, by God, they'll spend every penny of it. They may really only need 65 or 70 of it, which would be fine. Then they could keep that 30 and then forward that over to the next year. Tax raises and requests to raise your taxes are merely plastic surgery for government and financial malfeasance and incompetence. That's all they are. Yancy, you know that. And the NCAA, they're selective. They love to go after Ole Miss. I know Auburn's been hit. Alabama. They don't touch the schools in the Big Ten. It is selective enforcement. And how many people do they have on the staff of the NCAA headquarters, Yancy? I'm going to guess fewer than 40.
Yeah, it's always been selective enforcement. Like I said, the whole thing with Florida State. I mean, with Rashada, like you talked about, there wasn't enough money for a signing day bonus or whatever for when it was time to pay up. But what is the infraction? Why are you even doing this? The infraction with Florida State is because a coach told the recruit to go talk to X guy at the collective. I mean, that's common practice at every single school. Yeah. So it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is, and people need to understand that it's hypocrisy and it is selective enforcement. Rodney Orr-Tider Insider, one of our favorites, is on with us right now. Yancy Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline. We're talking about the NCAA, Rodney, and their selective enforcement. And that's why I think the NCAA, if I'm going to make a prediction about the NCAA's future, not on all, but for a lot of it, it looks to me like the respirator's on, the priest is in the room, and they're calling the kinfolk to the bedside.
Mm-hmm.
I think the NCAA you can outlive your existence. Trees don't grow to the sky either. Rodney, a lot of people, including my good friend John and Jack Turner, both. John got a copy of your book, Bigger Than Bama. Tony Barnhart was on in the first segment. Mr. College Football, talking about a great book he has written called The 19 of Green, how they, brought in the blacks and the whites all into one school in his small Georgia town 50 years ago. It's a great book. Let's talk about your book. I know there's a lot going on. I know everybody knows in the free world, Nick Saban retired 13 days ago. We're going to get to all the stuff in the portal and all, but your book is a real story that I believe will hit home with a lot of people. And it's one of the most important reads that you can buy, and tell people how they can get a copy.
You want me to give you a sketch of the book? Is that what you're asking?
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah.
Well, Rob, again, I'll go through this as quickly as I possibly can because it's a really complex story. But, in 1966, my dad was transferred from Mobile, Alabama to Corpus Christi, Texas. I did not realize as a 6-year-old kid that I was from the state of Alabama until I got to Texas, because they sure let me know it. I mean, we were kind of the outcast in our neighborhood. We had people from all over the country that had been transferred in, and of course we had some natives there from Texas and all of that. But we were the ones that were kind of caught all the grief from everyone being from the state of Alabama. And at the time, I didn't really realize what that meant. And I asked my older brother about the things that we were being called, and he told me, he said, don't pay them any attention. They're jealous. And I was like, well, they don't sound jealous. And he explained to me why, because Alabama had won the national championship in 64, 65. And as he put it to me, we should have won it again this year, but they screwed us out of it in 66. And, Rob, right there as a 6-year-old kid, it shows the power of words. And that's one thing that I want to try to get across to people is, and especially parents, not just parents, but also, siblings and people in your sphere, just how important words can be and how powerful they can be. Because my brother had no idea that telling me about Alabama football at that very moment was a seed planted inside that would direct me to exactly where I am right now, talking to you and Yancy Porter on this show that you have. So, it set the course for my future and, gave me direction. My dream became to attend a school at the University of Alabama, which I did. And I tell that story and how it came about. And, my further dream was, Rob, to eventually cover the University of Alabama program. And against all odds, that came to fruition in 1996. When I started TiderInsider.com from a little small bedroom in Corpus Christi, Texas. And within 18 months, I was making more on TiderInsider.com from a little bedroom in Corpus Christi, Texas, than I was as a salesman and public relations representative for a major waste company there in South Texas. So, it was really kind of blossomed into a dream come true. And my wife, who had been the ultimate spiritual pillar of our home, who had pushed me into my destiny, who always believed that my dreams were going to come true. And she spoke those things into me. And once we decided to move to Tuscaloosa and take Tider Insider full time, and, things just were blossoming, Rob, like never, beyond my wildest imagination. And all of a sudden something slipped in that I never expected. And that was that my wife, who again had been the spiritual pillar of our home, a strong Christian person, the greatest person I've ever met, she unexpectedly got addicted to prescription drugs. And I tell about the story and how our family, my wife and 4 kids, and how it just, we were on the verge of total destruction as a family. And ultimately, my wife passed away in March of 2007, directly related to, her drug addiction. And I was left with a real mess with my kids. My stepson, who I'd raised since he was 5 years old, he was 23 at the time. He was addicted to prescription drugs and was facing 5 years in prison for drug trafficking. On the night my wife was killed, my stepdaughter, who I raised since she was 4, was 22 at the time. Her husband was killed in a separate accident just an hour earlier before her mother's accident. And then we had a 14-year-old daughter who was smoking marijuana, drinking, and threatening suicide. And our 9-year-old daughter had seen more in her short lifetime than anyone, perhaps most people ever experienced. So I say all that to say, as I stood there, Rob, and had all this, it was like an EF5 tornado had swept through our home. And I stood there in my kitchen and I said, Lord, I can't do this, but you can. And it was, I felt hopeless, Rob. I can't tell you the discouragement I had. I can't even really hardly put it into words, where we were as a family. And I never, ever, ever would have thought we would be where we were. It can slip up on anybody. It can slip into anyone's home, whether it's addiction, a family crisis, whatever. And that's where we were. And I was left there to tell you that I felt like I was the only person in the world. I did. I mean, I felt extremely lonely. I mean, I had all these issues that I was facing with my kids. But you know what? Jeremiah 33:3 says, you will call out to me and I will tell you great and mighty things. And I'm just going to tell you, I called out to him in desperation. And did he transform everything immediately? No, because there was a bigger plan. He first wanted to transform, my heart and transform, my kids. And in that process, he led us through, the most trying times of our lives. And now I say that my stepson, he has Ascended Life Ministries in Des Moines, Iowa. He travels the world, ministering to people all over the world. He has a discipleship center on a Indian reservation in South Dakota that he initiated, that he built, and he's planted a church there up there. Just 13 years ago, he was facing that 5 years in prison, Rob, and now he's married and has seven children. My stepdaughter, who of course lost her husband and her mother at the same night. She now, of course, has been married for several years. She has 2 daughters, and our young daughter, who was threatening suicide, now she's married. She has 2 kids of her own, and she owns she's a business owner herself. She owns a very popular boutique here in Tuscaloosa. And, our youngest daughter is doing well also. But anyway, with all that said, I don't want to take up too much more of your time on this, but, it's just, I felt the need to write this book. I was urged to write the book. And, I really want to share the things that I went through in life to encourage others. And I want to reach out to men and say, hey, listen, you may think right now that you have nothing to worry about, but the enemy can slip in real quickly. And I want to advise you that, because he did with me and my family. And so I want to just say, hey, man, step back, take a look at your priorities, and look yourself in the mirror and say, hey, do I appreciate what I have? Do I appreciate my wife? Do I appreciate my family? And you know what? Because I'm telling you, when you're in a situation like I was in, it is, I can tell you, Rob, it'll certainly snap you out of any self-centered priorities that you have.
Yeah. Look, wow. Dr. Waller May, Dr. Guy May, they both, I just got a text from Dr. Waller May. And of course, this is the Tider Insider Report, sponsored by May Veterinary Clinic, Tuscaloosa and Northport since 1964. Both locations with drop off and pick up only Sundays, 3 to 5 p.m. at Camp May Veterinary Clinic. They have they have a pool outside for the dogs and cats, and connecting cat condos. The best veterinary clinic you'll find anywhere, but even better people. Dr. Waller May, Dr. Guy May, and their associates, the fellow doctors and the techs, they're watching it right now on the Google Smart TV in the lobby at May Veterinary Clinic. I just got to say this, Rodney and Yancy. Dr. May, Waller May, just texted me this. He said, I just started reading Rodney's book. Growing up in Texas through his brother, he started from early life, a Bama football fan, then became a graduate of the university, and through hard work created Tider Insider, and now never works a day in his life because he gets to do what he enjoys, follow Alabama sports with a community of fans. As a college student in the 1980s, he got to hang out an entire evening with Joe Namath. What? Who would not have loved that? And I love the location and venue of his delayed honeymoon. And Rodney and Yancy, absolutely we want you to talk about this on the book, because this is who you are and it's what you are, isn't it, Yancy?
That's right. It's a great story. Everybody's life has a lot of ups and downs, and some more than others. And it's good to let everybody know that you're not alone, right? I mean, this goes on everywhere. Drug addiction has been a problem since day one of mankind. So it's a great story, and look, just where his kids are ended up now, and just persevered through the whole thing. And Rodney himself, right? I mean, that's enough to break any man down. Yeah. I think it's a great story, unbelievable story. And
by the way, just folks, if you want to know, Rodney has 11 grandchildren.
12
grandchildren. And so he does this show in between, taking people here and there and everywhere in between, and maybe stopping off at the Casa for a taco burger or something like that. But that's amazing. And I got a lot of people texting me, a lot of Bama friends texting me, and fans of different schools going, I mean, seriously, Rodney, that is a story, because, I mean, I see it. I've seen it with people close to me. This is real life. And you put this in perspective and compare it to what's going on at Alabama. And Tony Barnhart talked in the first hour about how many times this is it, it's over, we're done. I mean, this is just a pothole in the road of life. Let's talk about what's going on at Alabama. It's different now because Nick Saban's not there. But Alabama football has persevered through all this stuff before. Now, selfishly, my friend, the late Ed Williams, his closing article as editor of the Auburn Plainsman student newspaper said, Shug, let Alabama win one every once in a while, or else they're going to go hire him a damn good football coach. We're all going to be in trouble. J.B. Ears Whitworth is my man for eternity to be the coach at Alabama. Well, damn it, they didn't listen to him. But no, Alabama is bigger than a coaching change. Talk about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that, it's interesting because it's not just a coaching transition, but I think it's a personality transition too. I mean, I think, Nick Saban had his style. I think Kalen DeBoer is a totally different kind of personality. I mean, it is what it is. And I think Alabama fans have to understand that. Kalen DeBoer is going to do things and needs to do things his way. And it's not going to be the same as what Nick Saban did. And I think that's always something that's difficult for people to accept. I would kind of go back 42 years ago when, Coach Bryant stepped down and Ray Perkins took over. Now, Ray Perkins had a personality that probably rubbed people the wrong way. And maybe his efforts to change things weren't as accepted as easily as hopefully Kalen DeBoer's will be, because I mean, everything Ray Perkins did was scrutinized to a T. That's not the way Coach Bryant would do it. We've been through that before, and I think Alabama fans need to understand, you don't compare what Kalen DeBoer is doing right now to Nick Saban. Times have changed. Things needed to change. Nick Saban realized there were things that needed to be changed. And he was at a point in his career at 72 years old, going on 73, that he would, if he had stayed, had to find a way to make those changes if he wanted to be successful. The one thing I'll say about Nick Saban is he always said, I'll retire when I feel like I can't keep the program at a standard that is what we have set. And I gotta give him credit. Rob, you and Yancy both know this. Coach Bryant struggled with that. I think at the end, I think there's other coaches, whether it's Bowden or Paterno, who struggled with that. And Nick Saban, when he saw that there were going to be significant changes that he had to make, and it just wasn't in the cards for him anymore, he stepped down. He stepped aside immediately. And I think this coaching hire is a tremendous hire. I really do. I think it's a great hire. He's a proven winner. I know there's a lot of questions. There may be some growing pains in the midst of it all, but that's kind of the way I see this transition right now.
Yeah. Yancy.
Yeah, man, I think there's a lot of truth in that, and kudos for Saban for stepping away when he saw that. And a lot of people are too stubborn. It's easy to say something, and it's harder to actually do it. And, there were some changes, and there's reasons why Bama was struggling, let's be honest, just to make the playoffs, which is a great thing for 99.9% of the schools. But Bama, that's not the standard. So I really like the coach that Alabama's hired. I think he's going to be a good fit there. It's going to be different. I think Saban's biggest obstacle right now is just to keep his fingers off the program from here on out and let the new guy do what he needs to do, because just like Rodney said, everybody's going to be wanting to compare. That's the way Saban did it, and he needs that freedom, and he doesn't need Saban over his shoulder, looking out at the program every day.
Yeah. Rodney, I mean, it's this 104-12. What's not to like about that? He's from South Dakota. I guarantee you, he's pheasant hunted a lot. This guy's to me so far. You look at what he did at Washington. He took over that program, and they're 25-3 in his 2 years. I guess the last question I'll just ask, and folks, Tider Insider, be a subscriber, only $48 a year on the May Veterinary Clinic Tider Insider Report. Let me remind you, most often we see the face of Christ and the least among us. We're the most blessed people in the greatest country in the history of the world. We the people is what it's all about. And but Rodney, close out and let them know how they can follow you, and then we'll say goodbye to everybody and be back tomorrow.
Yeah, it's TiderInsider.com. It's only $48 a year, and you can get instant access with your credit card, or if you prefer, there is an address there to send a check. Gives you all our premium information. But also part of that is our All Sports Forum, where we share a lot of tidbits and information right there on the forum, mingling with the fans. And, there's a lot of flow of information there, Rob. I'm telling you, anything that happens as it relates to Alabama athletics or even college athletics in general, everything, it appears right there almost instantaneously on TiderInsider.com.
All right, great stuff as always. Brendan, unbelievable job, our executive producer. This is the first time we've done the show like this together. All I can say is too much is never enough. This is awesome. Glad to have everybody, all of our guests.
Just tell me you love me. That's okay.
We love you.
Just look, there are people in your life you got to love. You got to love your golf caddy, right?
Yeah.
You got to love your producer. All right.
Yep.
These are guys you got to do. That's it. And if you're a quarterback, you got to love your offensive line.
The offensive line. That's right.
You love your mama.
This is it. Right. And you love your mama. God bless my mama and bless her soul. And so I'll expect my Rolex, sometime in the next month or so.
Hey, this is unbelievable. But Rodney and Yancy and to Tony Barnhart and Chris Lee in the first hour. Thanks, everybody. We'll be back on tomorrow. Appreciate you listening to all of our sponsors. Have a great one. We are out of here.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.